What is up, Daniel?
Hey, good morning, Jeff. How are you?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Pretty good. Can't complain.
Right on. Not that it would help any.
It never does.
Happy day 2 of Cisco Live. This is kind of surreal.
Yeah, I love this format. I got to say, I'm a big fan.
Yeah? What's been your kind of favorite thing so far?
I've been popping in and out of the sessions. Honestly, in the past, it's been unapproachable. If you have to go to San Diego and be there for a week. So I've really never seen much of Cisco Live other than the replays. And
yeah,
very few of us have time to go watch the replays. But I've been popping in and out of these sessions all week and looking at the PDFs. In fact, I got Carlos' PDF in front of me right now. And I think it's just a much easier way to consume the content and get a quick update.
It's so funny that you say that. I was talking to a bunch of people on Twitter yesterday about this, and we were all kind of joking about, one of the hardest parts about Cisco Live is usually that we can't get to sessions fast enough, or there's a thing happening here or a thing happening here, and you're running all over a conference center. And this time around, it's like I can get to any session I want to as quick as I want. I'm just not getting my steps in. So yesterday I actually went out to my treadmill in the garage, and I was watching a session before a live stream, and I took my iPad, which I have down here, and I set it up in front of on the top of the treadmill, put my AirPods on, and just put the weight vest on and just walked for 20 minutes to get a session in and get some steps in.
That's pretty clever. It's a new way to watch training.
Got to do
work out while you learn.
Exactly. Well, welcome everyone to the live stream. We've got 3 viewers right now. Thank you guys for joining. One question I have for everybody: if you were able to get a chance to watch Carlos's session here just a little bit ago, type in the chat what your key takeaway was. We were going to keep an eye on the chats or the comments here throughout the session. We'll reply back and feature you guys. So definitely chime in and say hi. We're super excited to talk. Daniel, thanks for joining. Would you mind giving to everybody just a quick intro to who you are and what you do here at Cisco?
So I'm a data center and cloud specialist on the West Coast. I'm just out of San Francisco. Been with Cisco quite a few years, and what I really do for customers is help them understand our technology portfolio as it relates to cloud and data center and kind of compute related applications.
Nice. That's awesome, man. And you primarily have been mapped. I mean, I know I've worked around you or seen you around since I've covered smaller customers when I was based in San Francisco, and now kind of in all of Northern California for some of our mid-sized and larger customers. What would you say is for you, not specific to the session, but kind of in general, since COVID happened and we've been talking to customers more and more, what have you seen as the biggest trend customers have been needing from us in the conversations you've had?
It's a tired old metaphor, but I think it's still a good one. It's the easy button. I think now more than ever, nobody has time to be messing around with things that are just overcomplicated. I think everyone's looking for an easy way to get the job done that needs to be done so they can move on to more important things.
That makes total sense. And I've got to imagine that's like one of the hardest things for companies. Some companies were already sort of like born in the cloud, like your Web 2.0 type companies that were startups built, born on a cloud or a public cloud that could be quicker to spin up these sorts of virtual resources for something like, COVID, even whether they did well or not, they had the capability because they were ready for it. But a lot of businesses, most of we talk to, just have never really been there and ready for it. So I think you're right that like the hardest thing is like, how do we even approach this when we don't have that, not just you can swipe a credit card to Amazon or wherever else and get access to a public cloud, but how does your culture and your processes internally even accommodate that? Because if you're not even ready for it, like cool that you can do that, but what do you do with it at that point?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, obviously none of us are ready for this. None of us have experienced this before. So it's definitely an exercise in stretching yourself and learning to be comfortable with things that maybe we weren't comfortable with before. Part of that is agility and being able to do things quickly, being able to change course based on new data that comes in. Some of it is just simplifying and deciding that maybe there were things we were doing before that we don't need to be doing anymore. So it's definitely there's been a lot of change that I've seen over the last few months.
Yeah, definitely. Well, hey, listen, I know we got about 8 people who've joined, give or take. Thank you guys so much for being here. We'd love to see some comments. Definitely chime in and chat if you have questions for us or if you're curious. Well, our main focus today on this live stream is all about the session that Carlos Pereira just had, the Connected Experience, the session on sort of insights and automation in a multi-cloud world. And I've noticed all day yesterday and today, insights and automation have been like a complete theme for everything that's been talked about, especially now with COVID and all these organizations and communities realizing that they need the flexibility to not just, I have to buy a box and put it into a rack to do a thing, that it needs to be more flexible, whatever solution they put in place. So I think a key part of that is knowing what you have, what's happening with it, which is the insights part, and then automation. Someone mentioned this to me recently, that it's not just automation in tools, because automation in tools like a workflow, like your typical things like your Ansibles and your Puppets and your Chef, automation tools, DNA centers and ACI, all these things can do workflow automation. But I think a big part of it too is on the people side, creating new habits, because a habit isn't automation. It's you not having to think about something so you can just go do it and it's not a big deal. And I'm noticing more and more that that's almost the harder part. The tool is easy to buy. Hire some professional services to set up a tool for you, no big deal. But how do you create those habits for people so they can feel like they're automating things away so they can focus on the important stuff? I think that's going to be a key theme just in general. So that's really our topic today for people watching. And before we get too far into it, I got to do something super social and totally meta just for fun. So Daniel, I'm going to try to make you live here. Hold on one sec. See if I can. Yep.
I'm already alive. As far as
you are alive. I'm going to do we're going to do a digital selfie while we're doing live. We're super we're like Inception based live stream selfies. So big wave and a smile. Perfect. Awesome. I know that's super cheesy, but we're totally doing it. It's going online. It's awesome. Let me pull you back out there. Awesome, dude. Well, listen, Carlos' session was pretty insightful. And a lot of the data that I had seen was topics I've seen in the past, but put together in a way that was kind of interesting. There's a couple slides I pulled out that I think be interesting to talk about. But rather than me talking the whole time, I want to turn to you and kind of, what would you say your 1 or 2 main takeaways from the content, the subject matter that he was really going into were?
Carlos is always very, very thorough. I've always liked that about him. I've seen this presentation from him a few times now, actually, and I really like the details and the context really that he puts around it. So to me, the core is really policy. He started this whole thing years ago with a discussion around policy. And I think at Cisco, we've been building for policy for a long time, but we haven't necessarily done a great job of explaining what we mean by that and why it's relevant. I think a lot of Carlos's conversation today was rooted in the concept of policy. And, I think what he really means is connecting people is kind of a table stakes. I mean, obviously in multi-cloud, you've got to be connected. The app has to be online. You got to be able to get to it. The other two pieces, process and operations, the technology, I think those kind of, they come along with it. But where it really gets sticky is when you're changing at a high rate and you're moving into tools and technologies that you're not familiar with. Maybe you're onboarding a lot of people. I mean, look at how many people Amazon has hired in the last couple of months. The one key linchpin that really holds it all together is policy. If you have well-defined policy and you have a good way to enforce it and make sure that it's applied across all of your various teams and technologies and products and tools, then you'll be okay. If you don't, then it's going to be much more difficult to be secure, to deliver a consistent experience, to even deliver the capabilities that you want, and in some cases, even knowing what capabilities you want. To me, policy is the glue that really holds it all together and takes it back to the core principles of what your organization is actually trying to accomplish. That was a very long-winded answer.
No, that's perfect. And actually, you got me thinking, because I've heard this before. I've heard a similar theme before with other parts of our environment, our network environment, like ICE as an example, that this policy or process thing, this comment comes up, and I'm really curious from your perspective. Are you thinking from that as both policy, as in like the technical policy that we implement into a tool, or is it or the policies themselves that we create as a business that we can then implement into the tool? Is it kind of like an or is it really like you have to have both?
No, it's definitely it's definitely an and I think it's everywhere if you start looking. Obviously anything software defined has to go back to policy. If you remove hardware from the conversation, it's only policy that's defining whatever the underlying technology is trying to accomplish. So I think if you look carefully, policy is really intertwined throughout everything that we do with these products.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I've heard this before, and it really impacted me in past years when I've worked with customers. We've had a few people come in that case, talking about ICE, so our identity services engine, policy sort of on the campus, but that policy idea really carries everywhere. And it's almost been if you don't have a policy around something as a business, how would you possibly do that same type of function in a tool? Because if you don't know what it is you need to accomplish, a tool is not going to do anything for you. I thought about this before when it comes to I got this sitting right here, my day planner. So today I handwrite a day planner, but I've gone through many iterations of that, whether it's a digital thing or typing it out or, handwriting on an iPad. But at the end of the day, I realized, I think it's exactly what you said. It's important to have a tool to do that. But if you don't have a process, the tool really doesn't matter. The tool doesn't kind of matter anyway. You need to have some sort of tool, but you've got to have a policy or a process in place as a person, as a business, or else that thing that's sitting in front of you kind of doesn't make any difference, right?
Yeah, I mean, the last section of what Carlos talked about was automation, and you're basically dovetailing into the whole conversation about automation. If you don't know what your high level goals are, then automation isn't really feasible. I mean, you might script something, you might, automate the, mounting a volume off of a file share, an NFS mount, but that's a very mundane thing. The concept of high level automation of saying, look, I'm going to make it self-service for my end users to be able to crack open a VM or get access to a container, you really have to be able to define what it is that you want them to be able to do. And I mean, one word for that is policy.
Yeah, that makes total sense, because you need to be able to understand what it is that makes up those things you need a tool to do for you, or what you need your business to automate away, so you don't have to think about it anymore. Actually, I just airdropped myself, and I'll see if I can pull this up. I wanted to pivot just a little bit into a slightly different topic. Looking to see if it actually sent over to me, and I don't think it did. But one of the concepts, I was going to bring up a screenshot of something Carlos shared, was he had a slide that said not all secure remote workers are the same. So I know this is a slight shift in our conversation a bit, but I think it does relate to the policy piece. He showed 4 different buckets of, I'm looking at it right now, of the types of secure workers. And I know this is a little off the data center side, but I think it does relate to the policy and the process that you were talking about. I don't know if you saw that piece of it, but it really gets me thinking that how we address the connectivity, whether it's, what off-prem or public data center that we have and where these resources live, how we address that for the different types of workers in our environment. Can you speak a little bit to how you've seen that handled by companies that you and I work with on a regular basis?
Yeah, so I think, let me know if I'm going in the right direction here, but policy, God, I feel like I'm repeating that word too much, but
no, you're fine.
When you look at what defines a remote worker, you probably, your security posture will be based on, what is that? Your security posture is really going to be
that's a bad picture.
Let's say that I think all of my remote workers are going to come in through VPN. They're not really going to do anything outside of VPN. And so I lock down, I don't know, my VPN concentrators, and I put rules on the laptops that say you can't do anything except what's going on with VPN. And then one day we migrate to O365, and guess what? All of the email, calendar, and file sharing is now happening outside the VPN. How do you secure that? That's a very mundane example, but the bigger picture is that, and I'm seeing this with all of our customers, is that it's hard to really know what people are doing. It's hard to know. Certainly hard to know what your applications are doing. So we have technologies like Stealth Watch and Titration, where all they do is watch everything that's happening across your network. And this, your network, whether it's physical or also in the cloud, we can watch workloads in the cloud. And we try to infer patterns. This is where the whole Carlos's insights and analytics comes in, because when we collect all that data, we can crunch it and look for patterns. And then we might realize, oh my gosh, I had no idea that I've got thousands of remote workers that are using this particular web service, and we have absolutely no policy or security posture around that, yet we probably have tons of company confidential data in that service. So maybe that's something that we need to look at now. But the point is that it's a very fluid and dynamic thing. So you've got to have tools that can show you, that can update that information and find the new and relevant bits and bring them to the foreground.
That makes a lot of sense. You definitely have to start someplace with some sort of policy, whatever that happens to look like. And you have to also kind of give yourself permission as an individual, but really as a business, to know that the policy that you're starting with today is going to change. It's going to turn into something different tomorrow, the day after, in a week, in a month, based off of insight from tools like Titration or Stealth Watch or what have you. As they teach you more about what is actually happening in your environment, then you can go back and say, let's modify our policy a little bit to adapt to what we're actually seeing, because what we're seeing is more likely what the business is really doing and or needing to do. If I understood you right, that's kind of what that sounds like. Is like they almost kind of like, it's almost like a chicken and egg, but you have to start with some form of policy. That really is the root of it. And then from there, you use insights and information from your tools to evolve that policy over a period of time.
Yeah, I'm a private pilot in my spare time, and one of the things they teach you is that a lot of low-time pilots will crash the plane by running out of fuel. And it's, you've got fuel gauges, how much fuel is in the plane when you take off. So how do people run out of fuel? Well, it turns out when you're planning a long trip, you plan for fuel stops and you know how much fuel your airplane will burn based on the winds aloft. Well, guess what? Wind is completely invisible. You have no idea what it's going to be you have an estimate as to what it's going to be, but then it might change when you're in flight. So if you got 10 knots more headwind, maybe you run out of fuel 15 minutes before you had planned, and now you're engine out, gliding into a field somewhere. So I love that example because it reminds me that you always have to be reassessing the plan. You make a good plan while you're on the ground, but then when your application is deployed and it's in the wild, you got to check it and see how it's changing, because it's guaranteed that it will change at some point.
That is such a good point. I think it drives home that whole the first part of the topic theme this week on insights, because if you don't have not just the plan in front and then the insights throughout the process to understand what is actually happening while you're going, it's not just I have a plan and a policy. Cool, great. Now let's run, and maybe we'll come back and look later. To your point, like the come back and look later could be the dive and the catch of there's a field in front of me. Oh crap, something just happened, which is exactly what a lot of businesses dealt with at the beginning of COVID, because they thought they were in a good place. They thought they had a policy and a plan, or a plan in place. They realized very quickly that whatever they hadn't actually looked at in some period of time. It was not relevant really at all to what was really going on. And now you have to figure out, oh crap, how do I deal with this on the fly? Awesome, dude. So one of the other screenshots, I think this one is actually a better picture that came up, and I wanted to talk a bit about it. Let me see if I can pull this up real quick for you. We'll see if this one's any better. Okay, that's a little better. So he showed up this slide titled Securing Consumer and Developer to Multicloud App. I think a big tangent on this too, aside from the insights and the automation piece, is the security side, because I think it gets talked about a ton on campus infrastructures, securing individual users to the direct workloads, like their hardware, like their laptops and the network, and preventing that front line, someone malicious getting in the front door, all these typical security topics. But I think this really gets to the heart of the back end problem that not a lot of people are really thinking about, which is as you are adopting more of, especially in a time like this, more of a multi-cloud environment, whether that is on-prem, you own it completely, to public cloud, to off-prem. And by off-prem, I mean, your public data center environments, like even Azure offers this, where you're putting your own stuff in their environment and you own it, but it's not a microservices or a containerized environment necessarily. All these different variations of a cloud environment, how you secure that so that who's developing apps and the workloads and who's consuming it, whether it's internal people or your actual customers outside the company. Securing all that it sounds like is like even more important now. Can you talk a little bit to like the deep kind of what the concepts behind what he was getting at here?
So we got to teach you how to use the key combinations to take a real screenshot.
Yes, I know. Okay, sorry. I was taking pictures with my phone to post on Twitter, and I realized as soon as I went to show this, I'm like, these are really terrible for a live stream. So I will get better, everybody. I'm sorry.
I'm just messing with you. So I'm actually looking at the PDF version right now. If I can't figure out how to share my screen, or I'd put that up. But I think what you're getting at is this concept of zero trust and the fact that a workload can be anywhere these days, right? It's no longer within the walls of a data center or a colo or even one cloud. It could be in somebody's random SaaS environment. It could be in a specific cloud environment. It might have to be on-prem. I mean, we're seeing more and more of this edge compute mentality. We've heard a lot about that with 5G. The fact that with these crazy low latencies, there will be a business case to put applications as close as possible to the end user. So securing things in that context becomes a very different challenge. And I'm not by any means a security expert. I can't talk too much about it, but the visibility and insights piece is absolutely critical. From a high level, you've got to be able to see patterns before they show up in the news. So again, something like Stealthwatch or Tetration would show you, hey, by the way, here's a connection that's being made to a development database that's happening in production. That's probably not a normal thing. It's either a defect or something more nefarious than that. You need to be able to see those things pretty quickly. Obviously, zero trust and all the things that Cisco can help with around securing individual identity is also pretty important for those types of applications.
That makes a lot of sense. Right on, Daniel. Well, listen, man, I know we're about 20 minutes in, and there's lots of other content going on for everyone attending Cisco Live today. So I don't want to keep everyone from all the Cisco Live goodness or you from any other sessions. So thanks again for jumping on. I really appreciate it. And to everybody watching right now, thank you guys so much for joining. If you have any other questions, this video is going to go up on the Baz Bytes YouTube channel here within a couple hours. It'll be there permanently, so anyone can watch it. You can add comments or ask questions. Click subscribe here on YouTube if you want to keep up with the additional live streams. We have one more live stream coming up today after the Meraki session. So I think we're going live at about 12:30 p.m. Pacific time. But there's a lot more Cisco Live content happening throughout the day. Don't forget, the DevNet Day is tomorrow. So definitely go to developer.cisco.com and get signed up there. And we'll see you guys on the additional streams. Thanks, everybody. Have a good afternoon.
Take care.